Here we are in the shade garden looking at a diverse group of species of shade tolerant Native American medicinal herbs. In fact, I'm sitting in the midst of the Goldenseal, the Hydrastis canadensis, and it is said that even the air that passes over the garden of medicinal herbs is medicinal. So I thought, well, let's take a breath together and breathe in the essence of these medicinal herbs. Annabeth, sit. Good dog. Ready? Blow out all your air through your nose and then take one deep breath with me, consciously. You only have a finite number of breaths in your life, so it makes sense to appreciate at least one every day. I had a friend who's giving a talk to herb walk to school kids, and he asked me what I thought was the most important thing that he could try to get across to them. And I said, if they take away only one piece of information from the walk, then you have succeeded. So choose that piece of information carefully and offer it up as best you can. Even maybe bribe them with some peas or some peanuts or something that will help them remember the moment gastronomically. So Goldenseal is our quintessential Native American medicinal herb. It's a source, the roots are the source of the bright yellow isoquinoline alkaloid known as berberine, and the aerial parts contain a constituent, flavonoid constituent that is a efflux pump inhibitor. So the pharmacology of it is that the berberine goes in and it attacks pathogenic bacteria, and then the efflux pump inhibitor disallows the bacteria from pumping out the berberine, which they normally do by using these nifty little vacuoles that they have within their cell wall. So you have a complete medicinal herb in that the roots contain the antibacterial compound, and the leaves contain something that keeps the bacteria from being able to resist the antibacterial compound. So when you make your Goldenseal medicine, basically the best way to approach it is a dry herb tincture. You mix the root with the aerial parts in the tincture and you get whole medicine. So this is an example of how whole medicine can be used in healthcare. The indications for using Goldenseal are swollen, boggy, reddish mucous membranes, which is an indication of infection. Rubor et calor is the Latin, redness and heat. So Goldenseal is very cold in nature, and it's going to shut down that hot infection in the mucous membranes, or say if there's a common cold that's going into the sinuses, if there's a infection in the eye known as conjunctivitis. These are all classic indications for the use of Goldenseal. I've been doing a little bit of web searching, and I see people recommending other berberine containing herbs to use instead of Goldenseal. Well, you can do that. You could if you want to eat candy, you could eat some really low quality candy if you wanted to, or you could eat the very high quality candy. So it's up to you. If you want to use some low quality herbs, then you could do that. There are various herbs that do contain berberine, but they are not on on the quality that you're going to get with Goldenseal. So in the forest garden of medicinal herbs, the goal is naturalization. You want to introduce the herbs, and then you want them to naturalize so that there needs to be less human influence in maintaining them in habitat, and they are able to self-replicate and spread. These are good things. In preparation for planting this Goldenseal patch, which was put in here years ago, we're underneath these oak trees here. We removed a lot of the dead oak branches and some oak branches that were coming in right too close to the ground. Those were removed, and then we deep dug the beds and added peat moss and compost in order to improve the quality of the soil. And then we came in the autumn with our dormant Goldenseal roots, and we planted dormant Goldenseal roots in these rows, which are still showing. But inside the rows now, there's a reproduction of smaller Goldenseal plants, and those have arisen because, for one thing, the plant is rhizomatous. It sends out some rhizomatous creepers. Don't be afraid of it. It's only good. And also that it drops its seeds, and you can see the plants are in the green berry form right now. The green berries are forming. We've had a very mellow spring. The frosts have not destroyed the flowers. The flowers have been pollinated and have given up to these green drupes, which later on will turn about the size of raspberries and be bright red. And as long as the wild turkeys don't get in here, we'll be harvesting Goldenseal berries and smashing them and getting the seeds out and sending them out to growers throughout the United States in order that they might develop a Goldenseal patch as well. There's really great value in mixing the species in the shade garden. If the plants are in a cooperative community in the way that you would find them in the wild, then they're a lot happier together. And one of the reasons is that they sequester mycorrhizae that really assist in plant growth. The mycorrhizae improve the resistance to pathogens. They also improve nutrient and water uptake from the forest soils, and then the plants photosynthesize by using the sunlight and CO2 and the water that is created makes sugars that feed the mycorrhizal fungi. So that's a gentle symbiosis that occurs in any of these forest soils and forest medicinal herb gardens. So here we have last year's black cohosh flowering raceme, and it's right next to this year's black cohosh. That's Cimicifuga racemosa. This is used as a antidepressant for treating like deep, dark, depressed states, which some of us may suffer from time to time. And it's also used for treating PMS and menopause symptoms because it's a proestrogenic kind of plant. So that is the dried root that's made into a tincture generally. So we can compare and contrast it to blue cohosh, which is Caulophyllum thalictroides. And I'm going to ask permission of this plant. Here I'm going to take a lower leaf set of the blue cohosh and a lower leaf set of the black cohosh. These are compound leaves, right? And you can see the difference between blue cohosh, Caulophyllum thalictroides, and black cohosh, Cimicifuga racemosa. The Caulophyllum, the blue cohosh, has these lobed leaves of 3, okay? So they're not pointed, they're lobed. And then the black cohosh has these serrated leaves. The edge is serrated like a saw. And so that's an easy way to tell the difference between the two of them. The blue cohosh is going to make berries on these thick stipes. Here are some, I don't know if you can see that. Here are some green berries right here on this very thick stipe. And the black cohosh is going to make a terminal raceme. There's the beginning of the flower there, that is composed of follicles, which are like pods that contain the rows of sort of angular seeds at maturity. So there is really no excuse for getting the two of them mixed up. They are both herbs that have a tendency to be useful for the females among us, and they're good herbs to know and to be with. Really, you can gain their influence by just sitting with them. You don't necessarily need to ingest them. And I do give thanks for these plants for giving us these exemplary leaves so that we could learn to tell the difference. It really matters. Here we are with the Virginia snake root. If you were taking a walk through the woods, you might not notice that this is an unusual little plant that's actually quite rare. It has these arrowhead-like leaves, and when I plant, I always plant in 3s, and that helps me look for more of the plant when I find one. So yeah, indeed, here's another one coming up here and another one coming up here. So years ago when I planted these, I planted it in 3 right up on this little mound. Our irrigation isn't working here and these are pretty dry, but we'll have to make note to fix the irrigation. And meanwhile, the Virginia snakeroot is coming back on again. It's Aristolochia serpentaria. It's in the Aristolochiaceae family. They are known as paleo herbs. They're very, very ancient. In fact, they predate the time when insects learned to fly, prior to the differentiation of the continents back into the later Cretaceous period, 66 million years ago. The Aristolochiaceae were born, and they have survived this long because they create very potent compounds which keep other things from eating them. But for the most part, other animals do not eat this plant, and I would not recommend that people eat it either because it's a potent nephrotoxin. But again, very important to integrate all the different plants of the forest garden, and that means that you get sort of a whole environment. Aristolochia serpentaria, Virginia snakeroot, a plant worth knowing. Don't step on it. Here we are with a couple of more of the forest medicinals. This is mayapple, Adophyllum peltatum, and here's the apple right here that follows on the heels of that delightful waxy spreading flower that occurs in the early spring. These fruits are actually edible, and deer really like them. So normally, unless you fence out the deer, you never see any apples on your mayaples. So there used to be a great demand for mayapple roots in the herb industry, and they are creepers. I don't know if you can see, but here's a small one, and that's the creeping rhizome right there. And then that will move through the surface of the mulch of the forest soil, and it will come back up again in another spot that's known as a rammet. When it does that, it's actually a clone of the parent, and so they will increase themselves in that manner. They're a very charming plant with this sort of umbrella-like palmate leaf form. See that? It's like the palm of a hand where the fingers come out, so that's known as a palmate leaf. And they're a good one to have in the forest garden to encourage other plants to be happy. So right next to it, we have a Solomon seal. The Solomon seal has this sort of sweeping form to it with these alternate leaves. And then there are a number of different polygonotums. So the way that you can tell the true Solomon seal is, it's polygonotum biflorum. So there are the two flowers coming out together like that. So that proves it to be the true Solomon seal, or polygonotum biflorum. And these make a root rhizome structure that's pretty extensive, pretty large, pretty meaty. They are edible, mucilaginous, so they provide that prebiotic fiber that's so important to your immunity. So that's a good medicinal herb to know. And then that reminds me that when you plant these things in the fall, if you expect them to come up the next spring and make flowers like that, that's too much expectation. The old adage is, first they sleep, then they creep, then they leap. So that means 3 years. 3 years to get a flowering plant like this. When you first put it in the first growing season, you may not even see it. All of the growth is going to be subterranean. That's because plants are smart. They know to create a foundation before they create their aerial parts. Otherwise, if they made their aerial parts in the first year, they would just fall over. Here we are with our final segment. We're standing in a patch of stone root, Goldenseal canadensis. It has a root rhizome structure that's deep within the earth, and that root is so dense, globular, lobed, heavy, that it really does resemble a stone when you take it out. And in terms of herbal manufacturing, since that's the part that's used for the most part, you wash that stone root and you grind it up right away, because if you let it dry, it becomes as intractable as bone, and you'll never get it broken up into pieces so you can make a tincture out of it. The reason to make a tincture out of it is because it's a great vascular tonic. It helps shrink hemorrhoids, spider veins, varicosities, and increases the blood circulation. So you think of it as sort of like the tensile strength of the veins, right? If you shrink the veins and you make them more elastic, then they're going to drive the blood better. so you'll have less problems with varicose veins. I'm going to ask permission of this plant to pick up a little piece of it. Here's a small one. Thank you, plant. This is in the mint family, square stem. Most of your mint family plants are going to have a square stem. They're going to have these opposite leaves that are serrated like a saw. They're going to be aromatic. This plant is aromatic, especially when it goes into flower. And it flowers very late in the season and creates a lot of nectar for bees late in the year. Yellow flowers that are full of nectar smell like lemons. That's because of essential oils. When you get that spirit of the plant coming up into your nose like that, that's the triterpenoic compounds, the essential oils coming off the flowers of the plant or the leaves of the plant and entering your olfactory. So mint family plants are usually safe for making tea. In this case, the aerial parts of this particular one, if you take them in enough concentration, will make you puke. So you can't just apply that kind of information across the board. You still need to know the specifics of herbalism in order to use these things. The roots are dug in the autumn, and when they come out, if you lift them carefully, you can see that the rhizome, like I described before, is like a stone, like a piece of space debris. And from the top of it come the rootlets. So they are actually situated on the dorsal surface of the root. And then they come around to the sides like a bad wig. So when we sell the roots in the autumn, we try to leave a piece of the stem sticking up, because otherwise invariably people will plant these things upside down, which is not so good. You want to plant them the right side up. Always look, when you're planting forest dormant roots, always look for the buds. If only to confirm to yourself that it's a live plant, but also because you want to situate the buds facing up. You clear a spot of the native debris, whether it be creeping snowberry or some grasses. Then you pull aside the mulch. Then you dig down into the substrate, the mineral soil. You place your root down in there, a couple inches deep, buds up, rootlets down, fill back in around it, tamp it into place, give it some love, think about the medicine, think about who will take it, how much they'll be benefited, then cover it up with the mulch that you pushed aside in the first place, and tamp down the top and think thoughts of peace. This is the way we integrate our humanness into the plant world, and the plant world influences us and makes us more peaceful. That is another kind of gentle symbiosis that occurs in the shade garden, and that's the one thing that I'd like you to take away with you on this day, is to live in symbiosis with nature.